Boy, has it been rough to be an X-Men fan. I mean, between the leaks of the Wolverine game looking like it's gonna be iffy at best, the information that Marvel, Kevin Feige has stated that they're going to continue the MCU with a very female-predominant version of the X-Men in that series, and as well as now, Marvel head honcho doubling, nay, probably tripling or quadrupling down at this point, that there's going to continue to be the mainstream propaganda narrative in the ongoing X-Men comics. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and that's right, Marvel executive Tom Brevoort, if that's a Brevoort, a very difficult last name that nobody cares about, because who cares about anyone in modern comics nowadays, has stated they are going to continue to push an agenda in the X-Men comics. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, because there's some trash we gotta talk about before the Happy New Year. Hit that subscribe button before we get into the article. We're going for a big number of subs here in 2024. We're gonna get there, and you gotta just hit the button and support me and those like me talking about freedom of nerd culture. Let's take this from Bounding into Comics. Marvel Comics exec Tom Brevoort pushes back after fans hope new X-Men event ditches ideology-driven storytelling, claims team is rooted in the message. And first of all, just look at this. This is modern comics art, everybody. This is abysmal. I got no other way to portray it. I mean, who could look at this and think, yeah, I don't understand why manga is beating American comics. It makes no sense. All you gotta do is look at the art direction here and you'll be like, yeah, I can see people wanting to pick up One Piece instead of this. It's just written, or I guess drawn, all over the page. In dashing the hopes of many an X-Men fan, Marvel Comics exec Tom Brevoort has pushed back against those who voiced concern that the publisher's newly announced next X-Men event would see the team further subjected to the publisher's current ideology, character subversion-driven editorial direction by claiming that the merry band of mutants has always been rooted in the message. And first of all, I do want to issue a bit of an apology, or maybe at least, some common ground, some mediation here, because as you know, I've thrown shade at Bounding into Comics. Well, quite a bit, actually. I've always claimed that Bounding into Comics was literally just the right-wing version of Kotaku or the Mary Sue. That said, they've cleaned up their image recently. They've gotten rid of a couple of their head honchos who were some of the worst about propagandizing, and it seems like some of the recent articles with the newer staff and crew are moving closer back to the center, like they used to be when they were able to be taken, seriously as a journalistic source when it comes to nerd culture. So I want to say thank you, Bounding. I appreciate that, and I appreciate this article, because I read through it already, and yeah, it's a pretty fair article if I do say so myself. Officially revealed by Marvel on December 20th, the aptly titled X-Men From the Ashes event will serve as the follow-up to the currently ongoing Fall of X and see the X-Men titles reborn in July 2024. Now, if you guys didn't know that there was an X-Men event going on called the Fall of X, yeah, I wouldn't blame you. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. We're talking about modern comics here, at least modern big two, Marvel and DC. Anything that's not an indie comic ain't getting read by the vast majority of individuals. Unless your name is Spider-Man, Batman, and maybe Superman, no one's buying your books. And this is no exception. Like, I grew up reading comics. I've been a massive comic book fan my entire life. I stopped buying mainstream comics, at least from Marvel and DC, probably 6 years or so at this point. But even so, I would try to keep up tangentially with the stories and the events going on, just so it's something to talk about with my friends or whatnot. I heard about Fall of X and promptly forgot about it because I just don't care. I think the last big event that I was, reading through, and even then I knew it wouldn't be quality, was the death of Wolverine. Like, when it comes to the X-Men, that's how long I've been out the game, because nothing has been good or interesting. And Death of Wolverine was like, what, 2016? I mean, who knows about Fall of X? I mean, it even sounds like a regurgitated form of, the House of M, Fall of X. So they're recycling their own title usage here. So no one's gonna care about the X-Men From the Ashes event if they didn't even care about the event that preceded it. Oh, look, an X-Men reboot. How many times does that make? When, again, we're seeing the Wolverine game looking mid at best, when you see all the negative press around the fact that the upcoming X-Men MCU movie is going to really focus on female mutants, when nobody was asking for that. Also, just to clear it up, no one was asking for it to focus on male mutants either. The X-Men have always been a team. We didn't care about the gender dynamics. We weren't like, oh, look, there's Wolverine, there's Cyclops, there's X-Men. Oh, what? Rogue is on screen, boo, we want to see more dudes. Like, nah, no one cared about the gender dynamics. We just wanted to see the X-Men working as a team because that's what they do. So by taking it and prominently stating we want to make it more female-centric shows you don't care about the team. You don't even care about the source material, the IP. Obviously, this is Disney MCU, so it's been like that for a while now. But when you've got the X-Men, which is already an incredibly diverse group of individuals, diverse group of mutants, you could just follow the regular source material and the diversity would come naturally. But they gotta even push the X-Men further down this rabbit hole in the movies, so of course you shouldn't be surprised that that's the route the comics are taking as well. However, outside the brief tease of a line reboot and a logo featuring the 1990s version of the team's logo, the publisher did not offer any additional information regarding the event. And this is what Marvel Entertainment posted. From the ashes, the X-Men titles are reborn. Following the end of the Krakoa era, new Marvel Comics X-Men ongoing titles launch in July 2024. So it's half a year away, 7 months at this point. How are you going to try and keep interest up for 7 months when you still have multiple projects coming out that once again nobody's going to care about? They must really be banking on Deadpool 3 sort of rejuvenating and revitalizing the X-Men name, because we've seen the MCU numbers. We've seen how these movies are flop after flop. So you are just grasping, just hoping and praying that Deadpool 3 gets people to think, okay, I'll give the MCU another shot, and then by proxy, maybe they'll go and pick up some books. Yeah, from where? Because of your crap writing, all the comic book stores are closing down. They can't keep the doors open in these places because people aren't buying comics because they don't like modern comics. They can go to the indie individuals and get it direct from the source, or they can go to Barnes & Noble and buy manga, which is selling in droves. So not only do people not care about this, they wouldn't even have a place to go purchase it because of your awful business decisions. Notably, while Marvel's official tweet announcing the event drew little criticism, it would be Brevoort's own promotion of the event in which he shared the above graphic and teased "Start the clock," that we would see fans pour out the voice and concerns. Start the clock for what? 7 months for something that no one's gonna read? I ain't watching a clock for 7 minutes for something no one's gonna read. I bet I'm gonna get more views on this video than there's gonna be actual fans of this story arc in July. So this is where Tom Brevoort said start the clock. Now, these are a few days old. These are from December 20th, and I actually did see the backlash live on X when it was happening, when it was going down. I thought about sharing it, I thought about commenting, but really, all the comments and whatnot said pretty much what I would have said anyway. Hey, can you get the message out of here? We would love to come back and be X-Men fans. We would love to come back and be comic book fans. Can you stop with all the propaganda and shoehorn messages? And frankly, the artist, or the head exec, yeah, he said, yeah, no, we're going to keep doing this stuff, because that's all they know at this point. So I didn't even bother weighing in on this controversy, because I didn't think it was newsworthy. I didn't think that anyone would be shocked or surprised. But then I remembered just today, oh yeah, we have multiple X-Men projects coming out, none of which look interesting. And the fact that you have at least 3 X-Men projects coming out, if you count Wolverine coming in 2026 as an X-Men project, then okay, at this point we gotta dissect and discuss why the X-Men is being so tragically destroyed on all fronts. Unless you retcon the past 10 to 20 years of X-Men canonical history so none of it ever happened, or reveal they were all damaged sinister clones the whole time, while the real X-Men were in stasis, it's all pointless, wrote Twitter user Thor Odinson. The damage goes way back before the terrible Krakoa era, so short of a massive retcon, you've effectively broken these characters for good. Congratulations. And ain't that the truth? Is there a single member of the X-Men you find yourself still invested in? Find someone you're like, yeah, I want to read about them. Like, do you know what's going on with Iceman right now? Better yet, do you care what's going on with Iceman right now? What about Nightcrawler? Like, there was that big controversy of how Nightcrawler was, the baby of a lesbian relationship or something like that. And I didn't see any, modern comic book fans talking about how great it was. I didn't see them talking about it at all. I saw a lot of anti-wokers roasting it. Frankly, I didn't even jump on that bandwagon. What's the point of roasting something that nobody cares about anyway? I did not see a single actual X-Men fan come out and be like, yeah, this was dumb, but the story's good. I like the Nightcrawler story. What about Rogue? What about Jean Grey? What's going on in the comics with their story right now? Can anyone in the comments tell me? No, because these books aren't selling, these characters aren't selling. Likewise, Crypto Count opined, unless Marvel cleans house, ridding themselves of the current writers, majority of artists, and editors, it will be nothing but a countdown to more failure. That's the sort of clock you're gonna watch. Watch the clock on when Marvel officially goes out of business, or if not goes out of business, because we know that's not gonna happen, they're owned by Disney, but starts licensing off their IPs for third parties to write, because maybe, just maybe they'll have a chance then. The industry hasn't admitted the problem yet, they added. Until then, nothing will change. Taking note of the event's use of the 90s logo, Inhumanation stressed to Brevoort, the fans made the industry and took it from the counterculture to the mainstream. We've watched our beloved heroes get prostituted out for the last 30 years, and for this to have any chance at recapturing any of the magic from that time, it has to be more than shoehorn DEI. Absolutely. I mean, did you guys see what Elon Musk put on Twitter or X a few weeks ago? You know, DEI must DIE. What a champ of a tweet. Whether you like Elon or not, DEI must DIE. Like, that's pretty good. I appreciate the wordplay. But, I mean, Inhumanation here is entirely correct. Prostituting these characters, I don't know about for 30 years. I mean, there were some good X-Men books in 2006, 2009. I mean, I think even as recently as 2012, there were some good stories. But yeah, as a whole, I guess if it weren't for the constant movies coming out by Fox, maybe people wouldn't have even been paying for the comics then. Or maybe people weren't. Again, I may have been in the minority. This is back before it was like super cool to be a nerd, so only actual nerds were buying comics. Giving a cheeky take on the situation, noted comic book YouTuber Comic Perch laughed, watching Twitter fans throw a fit about the end of the Krakoa era after 3 years of comic investment is quite something. I mean, can you blame them? Imagine collecting comics for 3 years and the tone of the comic changes dramatically. The horror, and I love that you can just sense the sarcasm here. Oh yeah, you've been collecting comics for 3 years and you see them change? What about those of us who've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, some people 50 to 60 years? If you were an old head, if you were reading X-Men when it came out in the 60s, and you're probably in your 70s to 80s now, maybe you're still following it. I don't know how many fans there are like that out there. I know that my father, the one that got me into comic books, was still actively reading comic books up until about 5 to 6 years ago, when he also gave up on them, and he was getting things like Spider-Man, and X-Men, and Lobo, and all these classics that he grew up reading in his youth in the 70s and 80s, and absolutely adored. He doesn't give a damn now either, so yeah, it's not just us, this anti-woke crowd that's throwing a fit about this. Your longtime fan who has been potentially giving you money for upwards of 30 years, they're out, they're done, they don't care. But rather than engage with the disappointed and hesitant fans in good faith, the Marvel VP instead responded to their concerns with a tired attempt to paint them as homophobes and bigots. That's all you guys are. Hey, you got a blue check mark next to your name. You give $11 to Elon, just put that right in his virtual pocket. That means you're a homophobe or a bigot. Well, this X-Men graphic sure brought people out in force, dismissed Brevoort. One reminder that I thought wouldn't be necessary. Express whatever opinion you like. Alright, no, hey, he's open to opinions and criticism. Good for you. But if you show up with homophobia or bigotry or hate speak of any sort, it'll be an instant block. Never mind, you lost me. You had us in the first half, not gonna lie. Why? At what point do they think this will translate to sales? Imagine being the VP of Marvel, seeing your sales go down the tube, being destroyed by indies and most importantly manga, after antagonizing the fans and think, come on, let's keep doing it, it'll eventually work. Isn't the definition of insanity repeating the same process, expecting a different result? You would never see a manga or an anime studio do this, talk down to the fans and call them all sorts of mean names. And maybe, just maybe, that's a reason for manga and anime's continued financial success. Just not talking shit to their fans. It might also have to do with the fact that those are if they are political, they're very, there's subtext. It's not the main point. It's not shoehorned in. When you combine those two things together, obviously you're going to have a better product, and by, a better fan, pay ratio as well. Like, you can have all the liberal, left-leaning, whatever opinions you want to hold. If you just did subtext, if you just put it as an undertone, you would still probably have a bunch of individuals that you would consider far-right buying your comics. Even people like me, I'm accused of being far-right all the time when I'm, probably slightly left of center, if I'm being honest, or maybe slightly right of center. Look, I vote on a case-by-case basis, issue by issue, so it depends. The point is, if anything, I'm moderate, and I'm not buying these comics because regardless of the political opinions, If it's just overt and over the top and it's not substantive to the story, then I'm out, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on politically. Unsurprisingly, the Marvel's Comics editor condescending flippancy was met not with applause, but further criticism of the publisher's disregard for not only its own characters, but its fans. Though they don't want you as fans. They would rather crash and burn as a company, and they would rather crash and burn as an industry than, take your dollar, you the fan, the paying customer. If you dared vote for Trump in 2016, for example, they don't want your money, despite the fact that it doesn't matter who it's coming from, money spins regardless. One such frustrated fan was Gavin Knight, who responded to Brevoor's dismissal by cutting through his attempts to run defense for Marvel Comics' low-quality output and directly requesting, how about you tell a good story and stop shoving the message down our throats? See, this is where I started to see it get involved, because I saw Gavin Knight's tweet, and I was like, oh, things are heating up, because Tommy Boy responded with, it's X-Men, the message is the premise. Full stop. This guy is either trying to create a narrative that is not the case, or just flat out doesn't know the history of X-Men. Because this whole X-Men was always about social justice is a narrative that was started by some fringe morons in the 80s when that was not the case back during its inception in the 60s. Again, he either doesn't know that or doesn't care. Because, hey, most of the head honchos from Marvel, all of them really, from the 60s era, the 40s, 50s, 60s, they're gone now. I'm in charge. I can rewrite history as I see fit. History is written by the winners, and make no mistake, these individuals have been the winners for the last several years. That's why making these culture war games that we have been making is the utmost importance. That's why when you see Era July and Rippaverse selling out the ass, that's why when you see manga crushing it on the sales charts, yeah, those are cultural victories, and that's what we need to keep reminding people. Don't just, throw fits about, the woke X-Men comic is out. Look, it's not going to sell anyway. You gotta keep reminding people of the cultural victories, because history is written by the winners, and the tide may finally be turning. As long as we don't rest in our laurels, as long as we don't get comfortable, then we actually have a chance at things swinging back in our direction. Then we have to fear whether they swing too far in the other direction, and we'll, go back to the satanic panic of the 80s when D&D was the devil, and heavy metal music will get you crucified, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For right now, I'd just settle with, hey, let's not race swap Rogue or Wolverine or any of these other characters, and maybe don't have Spider-Man hang out with Obama. That's pretty weird. I don't care who Spider-Man votes for. I care, was he able to save the person from the burning building? That's kind of what I want to know. And more importantly, I want to know what quip he said when he did it. Just looks at the bank robbers. You're on fire today after they set the place ablaze. Something to that effect. That's what us comic book readers want. We do not care about the Punisher teaming up with Eminem after Eminem said that he was ashamed to be white, for example. It's just things like these that are so over the top and unnecessary. No, I'm not making any of those things up, by the way. If you're not a comic book fan, that all sounded ridiculous. Those are all real things that have happened in comics in the last, 15 to 20 years. The reason I bring this up is because if you couldn't tell, I'm quite the bit of the fanboy. I've got a signed Secret Wars number 8 behind me, who was done by Michael Zeck, the artist who created the Black Suit Spider-Man. Off camera, I have the second appearance of Venom signed by Stan Lee himself. Your boy met Stan Lee, and I found out he was a Dragon Ball fan because he told me how much he loved the Goku shirt I was wearing at the time. Let me tell you, I've been a comic nerd my entire life, and when I say I could not care less about the X-Men at this point, it's because I could not care less about the X-Men at this point. Like, I was on Cult Classic Cage's show a few days ago, and we were just roasting it. And unfortunately, that's what it's come down to. Would I like to care about the X-Men again? Absolutely. It would take me back to a simpler time in my life when I genuinely wanted to talk about comic books with my friends and have these debates. But at this point, I'll just settle for the cultural victories of the roast sessions that are coming from it. Because when you've got the PS5 Wolverine game announced 3 years ago, not coming out for another 3 years, and then we get all these leaks and it looks like, this story is going to be aggressively mid, and the gameplay is generic as generic can be, then you see Kevin Feige actively push the MCU narrative to the point to where even if you were a detractor of someone like Gary from Nerdrotic, you gotta be like, okay, well now they're just openly saying it, and then you get this. You get the VP of Marvel say that not only is the X-Men comics going to continue to preach the message, but the message was always the premise, just because it is X-Men, when that has historically not been the case, and anyone could look at things Stan Lee said in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for verifiable proof of that. So no, this comic book is not going to sell. The movie might do moderately well because people will be interested. It is still the X-Men after all. People were creaming over that Captain Marvel's end credit scene because, you know, sheeple gonna be sheeple. And then there's gonna be the Wolverine game, which is obviously gonna sell well because idiots who own a PS5 are just starved for games, so they'll buy absolutely anything. But at the end of the day, real fans, yeah, we don't care, we've moved on. We're reading One Piece and we're enjoying it. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at BoltTheWord. And please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about, you know, Marvel or comics in general, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon, and remember, it's all here in the nerdosphere, and this has been Words of Paradise.